I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're taking a deep dive into a powerful and emotional journey with Reverend Larry Pettit as he shares his poignant new book, Death in the Parsonage. This gripping account explores the intense roller coaster of emotions following the sudden death of his beloved wife, Lizzie. It captures the raw essence of love, loss, and the path to healing. Join us as we uncover the heartfelt revelations and spiritual insights in this touching soliloquy of grief and recovery. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Reverend, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
It's my pleasure. This is a wonderful book. It's a beautiful tribute to your wife, Lizzie, and also is going to help a lot of people who are dealing with similar losses and grief, whether it's a loss of a wife, a loss of a child, or whomever they love. It's a very, very trying time. Let's start out by talking about Lizzie. She was your high school sweetheart, I understand, and you were married quite a long time, right?
Yes, that's right. She moved to Amro. I went to Amro High School. She moved there beginning her junior year. And I still remember the place when I first saw her. And I thought, boy, I'd like to get to meet her. And that didn't happen all at once. The first time I was going to have a date with her, I went to the door and she said, well, I'm going out with Larry D instead. Well, that was very disappointing. The second time I went to the door, she said, I am so sick that I can't go. And the third time I made a date, I went to the door. I said, this is strike three. This is it or not at all. And the rest is our history. It worked.
Amazing perseverance. And if at first you don't succeed, try again, right?
Well, I did there, that's for sure.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And you guys were married for 43 years?
40 years. We were
40.
married for 40 years. She died in July 17. If she would have lived until August 4th, we would have had 41 years anniversary. But really, we had 41 years together because we were high school sweethearts for a year.
Tell us about her passing, how it hit you, what took her life. Tell us a little bit about her passing.
Well, it was a complete surprise. 2 years before she passed, she was going to have a knee replacement, and the
Mhm.
heart test showed that there was an abnormality. Well, they were going to go in at her groin and put in a stent, but everything was clear. But they found, and I forget if it was a vein or an artery that should have been on the front of her heart was on the back of her heart.
Mm.
And just one of those genetic flukes. She never knew about it until then. But when I look back on our marriage, there was a lot of times she'd say, I just don't feel good. And I think it was due to that.
Yeah.
One time I went in the bedroom and she grabbed her heart. I thought she's having a heart attack. I said, I'll call 911. She said, oh, no, it'll pass. So it was something that she was used to, but just did not reveal it to me. And then she passed away suddenly.
Awful, awful. There's whether they're sick for a long time or whether they pass suddenly, like your wife, it obviously hits you like a ton of bricks. When you're married that long, it feels like she's part of you, and she is. What did you do? How did your faith guide you through this grief of losing your wife?
Well, we have a handicapped daughter. We were in a car accident when Melissa was 9 months old. Lizzie broke both of her jaws. I rebroke a thigh and broke my neck. Melissa broke an arm and a leg, which were minor, but she had a brainstem injury. So it left her with a partial paralysis and a mental challenge. And we would tell Melissa, more than likely, one or both of us are going to die before you, but we're living to go to heaven. That's our purpose. We're living to go to heaven. And of course, I was not expecting that. And I've never journaled in my life. But for whatever reason, when Lizzie died, I think the very first night I started keeping a journal, and I'm sure it was therapeutic. Then I thought, well, if it was helpful to me, maybe it'll be helpful for others. And thus it turned into this book.
Yeah. Tell us about that journaling. What did you write down, how it helped you, and how you think that process will help others?
Well, being a pastor, being a minister, I've had funerals for both my grandmas, uncles, family members, church members, community members. And I express it this way: on Monday after the funeral, life goes on. But
Mm,
when Lizzie died, it was like my aim, my goal, my ambition, my desire all died with her.
yeah.
I went for 3.5 years. I was completely alone and in a vacuum, except for the Lord. The Lord was always there. I always depended upon him, and he said he'd never leave me nor forsake me, and he hasn't.
Mm. Exactly. It's hard at that time to not feel like they've been forsaken. A lot of people do. They feel like, why me? Why does this have to happen to me? I know death is part of life, and you try to, on an intellectual level, understand that. But on an emotional, guttural level, you sometimes do lash out. You do feel angry. And some people actually turn away from God. I was helpful to you, of course, to embrace God. Talk to me about those different feelings that people go through when they are suffering something like this, particularly when it's maybe the loss of a child, which seems so untimely and so wrong.
Well, this book is about the emotional roller coaster ride of death, not
Mhm,
so much about the spiritual aspect, the emotional.
mhm,
And that's what it was. I have a chapter called Abandoned because that's what I felt like. I was abandoned. And I know Lizzie didn't do that on purpose. That's death, you know. Uh, I have another chapter about a new identity. At first, it seemed like every place I went, I had to identify that I'm a widower. My wife passed away, and
mm.
so these are emotions that I wrestled with. I went through. I experienced, and I'm sure that all kinds of people do that. And you're right. There's some people that turn against God, and that's a time when you should turn closer to God than ever. The devil, he's the author of sin. All sin, sickness, disease, sorrow, heartache, it comes from the devil. But being a pastor, I know I've had people, somebody got shot in the family, they turned to, it was God's fault. An accident happens, it's God's fault. We're not puppets, and God doesn't have us on a string. We make choices, we make decisions. There's certain laws that God has put into motion. What goes up, what's the rest of it?
It's down.
It's going to
Yeah,
come down.
yeah.
And God has certain principles in life that are set in motion, and one of them is death. And then we experience the emotion, the spiritual, the psychological, the mental, and all of the different things that are contained in that. And you know, Lizzie and I passed out a little book about death, and it had, I think it was either 5 or 7 steps that people go through. And when I read that, and we passed it out to all kinds of people, and one of the steps was anger.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get angry. This is what we're living for. Then I
Right.
had a friend, she was married to the sheriff in town, and he passed away. And she was a Christian, and she asked the same question: well, when is anger going to come? Well, being a Christian, that emotion doesn't have to come because we're settled it. We're going through with God. No matter the past, the present, or future, it's already resigned. I'm going through with God, and He's going to take me through.
Absolutely. As Christians, we believe in eternal life, which is the
Correct.
promise of Jesus, which makes it different for us. And that's when your faith comes into play. And that's when your faith can sustain you during such hard times, knowing that Lizzie is there above you in heaven. And one day you'll be reunited with her and you'll have an eternity together and not just 41 years or so. Did the passing of Lizzie change the relationship you had with your children? I guess a lot more fell on you at that point.
Well, I can't say that it really changed our relationship. We've always had a good family relationship, a family of love and care and concern, and those things just carried on, and they carry on today.
Absolutely. And sustain you, I'm sure, as well. The fact that you do have the loving family around you. What do you hope readers take away from this book?
I hope that it helps them to see what they're going through is a natural experience, that you're not isolated, that God isn't your enemy, that Jesus is real. He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. If you turn to him, he's right there. He said, cast all your care upon him, for he cares for you. And I would pray that they would find that to be so also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You administered, most of your adult life or all of your adult life, more or less. Um, has this changed you? Has it changed your ministry? Has it changed your message? Has it opened you up to new ideas and new emotions and new thoughts when dealing with other people who are dealing with grief and death?
I think it's helped me to become even more compassionate and most definitely patient.
Hmm.
Uh, Melissa was most of the time with her mother.
Hmm.
And with the passing of Lizzie, then she became my full time business. And Melissa had two speeds, slow and slower. And through all of that, I've learned to become much more patient, not just with Melissa, but with myself and people and situations. So, yeah, it's a growing process.
I think in many ways people feel like they've been touched by the grace of God and comforted by God during times like this. I think that peace kind of surrounds you and enshrouds you. Do you have a similar feeling?
Oh, I think so, definitely. I'm dealing with a family right now. Uh, who Melissa helped care for by just paying visits. This lady was very depressed. Her husband passed away, and she was very depressed and lonesome. And Melissa would go and sit with her and just be company. And I got all kinds of thank yous and cards from the family that Melissa helped bring her out of the depression and made her smile and laugh and things like that. So people go through these things, and a lot of times we need companionship to help lift us out of the bucket.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this book will help lift us out of the bucket as well. It's called Death in the Parsonage. It is a gripping account that explores the intense roller coaster of emotions that followed the sudden death of the Reverend's wife, his beloved wife, Lizzie. The book captures the raw essence of love, loss, and most of all, the path to healing. Reverend, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you for having me. I so appreciate it.
I appreciate your time. God bless you, sir. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.